Is this the promised incel video? Of course not, because I'm as consistent as the Aussie weather. This is what we're talking about now instead. Zombies, schlock, and evil pharmaceutical shenanigans. If you don't like it, take it up with your father or something. So earlier this week, at the time of writing anyways, Resident Evil Darkness dropped, and I, being the absolutely ravenous RE fan that I am, watched it as soon as Australia was allowed to lay eyes on the beauty. Do a little hand rub. And what did I think for those people that want a simple yay or nay? Well, it's a pretty begrudging nay from me. Now I wanted to like this beast, and I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to Resident Evil content. Hell, I adore Resident Evil 5, stupid Wesker, volcano, boulder punching and all. I even love how ludicrous Resident Evil Village is. I can roll with the dumb, is what I'm saying. Not just roll with it, but crave it. If something insanely stupid doesn't go down, is it really a Resident Evil game and or movie? I think not. Moreover, I've been pleasantly surprised by both Resident Evil and streaming adaptation of animation series as of late. It started with the Netflix original Castlevania, and most recently continued with Amazon's Invincible adaptation, both of which I think did a really fine job of creating immersive, funny, and impactful shows with animation and existing source material. Comparatively, Infinite Darkness doesn't work for me, as a Resident Evil property, nor as an animation series original. If I were to choose one word for Infinite, it would be mundane. And Resident Evil may be many, many awful, horrendous, and outlandishly funny things, but mundane would never be a word I apply to this series. In short, I better see some shark jumping before I give any Resident Evil product my fan stamp of approval, and Resident Evil Infinite Darkness is more akin to a soggy dredge through swamp waters than a glorified shark jumping tournament like the RE live action series that just so happened to come before it. So, let's unpack this. Episode 1, Infinite Darkness and the RE Universe. Now, as a first-time media reviewer, allow me to present this very innovative way of speaking about a Netflix show. So, let's just go episode by episode and break it down. Okay, look, if you came here expecting anything other than a Resident Evil fan's mad ramblings, then you have made several poor life choices. Right out of the gate, Infinite Darkness has decided to the well-worn RE trope of using third world countries as a backdrop for its nonsense. It could be worse. Resident Evil 4 and 5 tread a very fine line when it comes to racial insensitivity. Let's not talk about that right now. It actually seems appropriate enough, seeing as this series takes place smack bang between those two games in the timeline, choosing to focus on the Resident Evil cult favourite Leon. But as the memes may have alerted you, Resident Evil does tend to favour Leon and Chris over all other characters, and don't worry, they continue this proud tradition here. We'll get to that later. Now, what you might immediately notice with the show is that everyone is dead set on being a miserable bastard at all hours of the day. But we can't judge them too harshly for that. Smiling has been outlawed after all. Oh wait, no, everyone is just in desperate need of a dose of serotonin here. Maybe don't introduce your golden boy by having him snub his pilot, Infinite Darkness. Also, calling this show Infinite Darkness is a mouthful, so we're gonna call it Infinite so that I can backhandedly make jabs at Bioshock's least impressive game at the same time. We all got that? Good, let's continue. So yes, one of this show's greatest weaknesses is apparent right off the bat. It is just miserably despondent. It is populated with your typical serious, angst-ridden muscle men bemoaning their own angst. But here's the thing about Resident Evil that I personally love. It's always fun. A lot of the time this is achieved through the simple fact that the games tend to be, well, fun. That is the purpose of a game. That's sort of the whole point. But even the live action series are unabashed, stupid fun when they're not drowning in over-the-top melodrama, which is funny in its own way. Resident Evil has a long and proud tradition of being absolute batshit nonsense, sometimes self-aware, often not, but you could never accuse it of being boring. Stupid? Sure. Poorly written? Absolutely. Self-indulgent trash? Go for it. But mundane and boring? Not on your life. Infinite is just that. It is a series populated with drab, melancholy characters that often have not earned that through emotional or powerful writing, and are not over the top enough to be ironically funny either. There are glimmers of hope here and there for the comedy, unsurprisingly almost exclusively from Leon. Speaking of the Golden Boy himself, Leon is introduced to us in perhaps what is the most cliche and outplayed ways, and I sorta still love it. Whiny Man here, love your whiny, don't stress about it, says Leon ain't hot shit, so of course, Leon has to save his life and prove that he is the hottest of shits.
Leon? Shoot him in the head. That stops him. Come on.
Now, I rag on this introduction a bit, but you know what? I actually like it a lot. Originally, I thought I had the whole character of Whiny Man pegged down start to finish. I thought he'd be the resentful kiss-ass that went to stupid extremes to try and discredit Leon and prove his own worth. Maybe with a dash of insecure-driven betrayal for a treat? But no, rather than buckle down and become bitter to stick to a character type that's a bit akin to the Lyle revealed trope in terms of irritability, Whiny Man actually has a total change of heart and becomes a pretty strong Leon fan himself. I sent strong shipping material here, kids, carry on. But just kidding, say goodbye to Whiny Man. You won't be seeing him until the final episode. We're shit out of luck with him being anything other than a momentary plot device and a hype guy. But don't you worry for Whiny Dude. He's not the worst done by character here. Not by a mile. Anyway, bye. See you at the end of the show. Now, the incident that resulted in Whiny Boy almost turning into this poor sucker's next meal is an attack on the White House with the release of the T-virus into the building. Now, for any zombie fan out there, you know that this probably should have resulted in a whole citywide disaster if Raccoon City and every other Resident Evil game and movie is to be considered, but in this case, the outbreak is so well contained that not even the press has the faintest idea about the breach in security at the White House. That is really fucking impressive, guys. Wish you could bring that to like any of the other games in the series. During this incident, we're introduced to Jason and Shen Mei, who actually have a lot more to do with the show than poor whiny guy does. Even if Shen Mei does get distracted looking at a painting during a zombie outbreak in the White House, what are you looking for in those? Do you think the undead can infect oil paints now? While Shen Mei is one of the less miserable characters in the show, despite good reason to be pretty broken up, which we'll get to shortly, she is also the first sign for me that women might be getting a bit of a raw deal in this one. Hear me out. I can already tell some of you have gone for the keyboard. Just hear me out here. Let's compare Leon and Jason in this scene to Shen Mei. We're not including Whiny Guy, he was a set piece for Leon Hush. Jason. 9 confirmed kills with numerous others implied off screen, 5 kills, one of which he doesn't even look at when he killed them. Shen Mei, 1 kill that immediately distracts her to the point she would have died if it was someone else. Okay, I will grant that I might be completely overthinking this, I would give that to you, but don't worry, Infinite doubles down on making the female characters in this show simpering, ineffective fools. Just hold on to your hats, we'll get there. After the outbreak, Leon is briefly called to by a reporter that mentions the unusual nature of the Civil War incident from 6 years ago that we opened the show with, but it doesn't amount to much and he's quickly whisked away to a submarine for a mission that he and Jason were recommended for by this guy. The mission itself is very vague and Leon is asking some pretty valid questions, but well...
Okay, where are we at?
Alright. Our mission is to infiltrate the bioresearch facility and seize any evidence pertaining to the hacking and the viral terrorist attack at the White House. I'll brief you further when we get to shore.
We could just hack them. What's the point of even going?
Sorry, champ. That's classified for now.
Details on the facility?
For now, classified.
Time limit?
Classified.
Right.
Don't worry, the mission itself really isn't that important. All you need to do is remember that this guy, this one here, sent them despite the president's other advisor being pretty strongly against it. Try to remember these two politicians, they'll be resenting our political arguments going forward. And yes, there are actually kind of political arguments in this Resident Evil game. I mean, movie, show. I keep calling this a game when it's a show, but it just feels so much like an extended cutscene. I keep expecting to suddenly be handed a remote. But regardless, moving on. Episode 2. It gets dumb, but fun. Now, I've talked a lot of trash so far, but to be perfectly honest, I'm actually really here for some of the political aspects of zombies. What a wild sentence that is, but I stand by it. We've all seen zombies eating someone's face, it's well-trodden territory. But the political fallout, the way that lawmakers and people charged with protecting the nation while also balancing relationships with other nations that they're not sure are an ally at all times, that's actually kind of interesting. It's not entirely untouched upon in media, of course. There's usually some level of social commentary in the zombie as well as any other monster. Our creature creations change with our social anxieties, and so do our depictions of them through our media. The traditional example for the zombie movie would be the granddaddy of the modern zombie, Night of the Living Dead, with its commentary on consumerism and the human condition. I know it sounds wanky, but that is a very surface level reading of a classic. A more recent example that jumps to mind regarding politics and monsters would be Shin Godzilla. I know it's from 2016 and that's not exactly recent, but shut up, I'm going with it anyway. Shin Godzilla is a movie that spends more time with the scrambling Japanese government trying desperately to protect its people, save face, and act correctly while being wrapped up in a blatantly unnecessary amount of lines of command and red tape than it does the actual titular Godzilla, who, side note by the way, who is perhaps the most horrific imagining of Godzilla ever put to film, and I love him. Of course, Shin Godzilla was almost certainly a direct response to the devastating floods that struck Japan post an earthquake in 2011 and the government's response time to it. So, with that in mind, what is Infinite saying with its monsters? Well, in this case, as is the case with many zombie and indeed all monster movies, the real monsters are not the ones overtly eating their fellow man's flesh. At least they're honest about wanting to feed off the innocent and vulnerable. Put a pin in it, we'll come back to it later. In episode 2, we get a bit more depth to Jason and Shenmei, as well as more snippets of the events that took place in Penamistan. Penamistan? Is that how you say that? They've made up a country for this, so I'm not going back to watch this fucking show again. I'm not doing it again. We're gonna bumble our way through the made up name. Someone in the comments is gonna crucify me for this. Anyway, more snippets of the events that took place in the Penamistan Civil War some 6 years before the events of the show. A war that I can only assume is making I was gonna say a commentary, but it feels more like a jab at America's history of getting involved in wars they ought not to have been a part of. And I swear the RE franchise likes to destabilize Middle Eastern countries in its game as much as the real US does. Can I make that joke? Fuck you, I'm making that joke. Is it as bad as Resident Evil 4 and 5 with their depiction of Mexican and African villages respectively? No, but it does have classic RE's weird racial depictions stink all over it. Moving on. The Mad Dogs and their fates are still unclear at this point in the narrative, but for me personally, I was putting bets on them all becoming infected, which, given we see Jason giving himself a shot of some unidentified substance in the submarine, is a pretty safe bet. However, I was also considering that his teammates had all become zombies with only one left that Jason was trying to cure locked up in his house, and that something had unfortunately gone wrong that resulted in the zombie either dying or needing to be put down. This would have been a variation on the lock up your wife and or child zombie trope. Now I was wrong about this, but keep the trope in the back of your mind, we're not done with it just yet. We also get a bit more of an understanding of Shenmei and Jason's relationship as she's revealed in the flashback to have also been on the ground during this conflict. To give credit where credit is due, I actually quite liked this reveal. It's interesting to see her change in demeanour from 6 years ago to her attitude today, as well as giving the two characters more history, leading them both to be a little more intriguing and give them relationship importance. But of course, Shenmei also mutters someone's name while looking sadly at a photo. At this point in the show, my best bet was on Jesse being the zombie they were trying to cure, and that had gone south. Again, not a bad guess on my part, and we'll file it away for later. I know we're putting a lot of things away for later, but just hold on to them all. Take notes. Don't take notes, this show is not worth your fucking notes. Now, I actually get to say some nice stuff about Infinite. Shocking, I know. I was actually quite enjoying some of the action scenes in this, limited as they have been so far, as well as some of the camera work, specifically this shot here. At first it just seemed like an interesting placement for a scene transition camera, but then it began to truly stalk this miscellaneous character, and I realized that this fucker was about to go full Jaws POV on it, and I loved that. It may be just because we've had a pretty severe lack of any interesting zombie types so far, and this introductory shot for a new monster felt very promising. But of course we have to quickly cut back to Leon and Jason, and what do you know, Leon has just unlocked this man's tragic backstory. Congratulations. I don't know exactly how he unlocked this backstory, as Jason had pretty firmly refused to tell him earlier, presumably just by standing there in uncomfortable silence since the man woke up. I get you only have 4 episodes to work with, and this is actually just a movie that you've cut into 4 parts. You're not slick, Ari, I can see what you're doing. This is clearly just a movie that Netflix has cut into 4 parts for whatever reason. Still, that was a very quick change of heart there, Jason. Unfortunately, it is here that the traditional RE clunky dialogue begins to shine through in earnest. Like the oppressively dull atmosphere thus far, this conversation is your dime a dozen soldier zombie survivor story. I'm sorry, Jason, you just don't inspire much sympathy within me. It helps none when he drops this line.
That was hell.
Yeah. I bet.
You have no idea.
Sir, this is Leon fucking Kennedy you're talking to. You should know damn well that he has an idea. You all spoke about him in the first episode. You know, about the Resident Evil 4 event? Raccoon City shouldn't be needed on his rap sheet for you to change your mind. Come on, man. Well, at least they're bonding. The dialogue is still jank as hell, and I hope you never change, Resident Evil. This conversation does actually lead to an interesting outburst from Leon.
Yeah. The government wiped the city off the map, covered it all up.
Sure. They didn't want it to spread. You destroy a city to save the country. It's a tough call, but someone's got to make it.
There were people alive in there. There were families alive in there. They didn't even try to get them out, so tough call, my ass.
When I think of Leon, I don't tend to think political rebellion, especially when he's the president's favorite. But this is actually rather refreshing. But then, we get this doozy of a line.
Cannot save a country if you don't give a damn about the people in it.
Before, you said terrifying. Do you know where the root of terror comes from?
I don't follow.
Is it the unknown? Do we fear what we don't understand? Go on, say it. Say the thing.
It starts with fear.
I mean, I guess? What? I mean, technically? They're synonyms, so you're not wrong, but what? Sweet Jesus. And then he monologues about the unknown, so 2 for 2, I guess. So at this point in the story, Jason takes a hard turn into villainy. Like, damn son, that was really sudden. But I suppose you only got 2 more episodes of this villain thing, so let's just steam on through it, and steam through it we most certainly do. In short order, they find most of the crew dead, with what is honestly more gore than I was expecting of this show. Whew, that is unfortunate, son. Shoot him in the head, Leon. You gotta shoot him in the head. Okay, then use the knife. I love it when characters in horror movies do the right thing. Wait, Leon, you didn't. Leon, you gotta stab them in the head. Leon, have you learned nothing? I had such faith. You didn't double tap. Now they're gonna be coming for your giblets. Now, while Leon tempts fate by forgetting how zombies work, we get an abrupt villain moment from both Jason and Shen-Mei. It does check out between the interwoven backstories and his evil speech just a moment ago. To me, this was just the right amount of, I guess, surprising. Granted, they did telegraph their killing of the men just a little too much. It could have been a real oomph moment, and they sort of missed that mark. But it at least didn't feel like too hard of a left turn for them, I suppose. After this, we finally get our first Resident Evil style zombie mutation, and
Jesus.
oh wow, that is fucking disgusting. And I hate it, but I love it. God damn it, why are you like this, Resident Evil? The rats under the flesh are actually quite horrifying, and I give them points for making me a little bit uncomfortable here. Oh, actually, they're kind of cute now I look at them.
Wish I had some cheese.
Never mind, please just fucking kill him. As much as lines like this make me want to drown the little bastard, it is a much needed relief from the otherwise gloomy characters we've been subjected to thus far. I just punched my PS4, I'm sorry. But this is also where some of the narrative pacing becomes even messier than it already was. They carry on all the way to the hotel, not talking about what happened on the sub or Shen-Mei almost shooting Leon, I suppose. I guess they just didn't think it was worth discussing. I was rather irate during this section, asking myself what on earth any of them were even thinking at this point. Leon of course knows that it was them, and he's not questioning this at all, and why are they letting him tag along when very clearly they were ready to dispatch him right then and there? Leon I understand it to an extent. He's hiding that he knows they had a hand in killing the entire crew and likely took the infected rat infestation with them, and he may also be planning to get information before doing anything about that. But what about them? Why haven't Jason and Shen-Mei offed him? He's very clearly a weak link here. You better have a fine explanation for this, Resident Evil.
You just killed a sub full of people.
Oh, okay, never mind. He's just gonna come out with it. Leon, you dumb motherfucker. I hate you so much. Oh my god.
Remember when I told you about terror? It starts with fear.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I can't believe this redundant, fake, deep philosophy from Jason here became the cornerstone of the villain's drive and hero's conflict in this narrative. But here we are, and they're going to repeat it plenty more times going forward, I assure you. Well, at the very least, the proud tradition of over-the-top melodramatic villains lives strong here. Oh, holy shit, he's fucking dead. Okay. Jesus, wasn't expecting that. I know that we're halfway through the show now, but I did not expect for one of the only established characters to eat dirt so soon. I'm actually impressed. Pin this, because I will take it back later, don't you worry. Episode 3, the only good one. Alright, ladies and gents, time to see if our bets paid off. What was Jason hiding in the house? Apparently jump scares the musical. Damn, that sound cue is working overtime to sell the scene, huh? Okay, so I was a little off in my earlier assessment about Jason mining one of his former soldiers as an infected. At least in part. His mate was indeed infected, and it seems that Jason is too, judging by the injections littered across the floor resembling the one he took himself. I had originally assumed he failed to keep giving his friends the medicine, or something had gone wrong and the man turned, but instead they were all infected and each individually opted to end their own suffering. Honestly, can't really blame them for that. But we haven't gotten the full story just yet. To be honest, this is not a bad variation of the chaining my zombie wife and or child up and feeding them trope, which we are actually going to take a moment to talk about here because I don't see any better times to talk about it. The chaining of my zombie wife and or child and feeding them trope is one almost exclusively reserved for women. Exceptions are made for children, including sons and the like, but some examples off the top of my head would be Alive, a wife, Walking Dead, a daughter, Dawn of the Dead, a wife and child combo. No feeding in that last one, but you do get the idea. Actually, let's include Z Nation in this list. There is a zombie daughter in that one. Granted, the dad is also a zombie sort of, you know what, let's not get into it. That show is very complicated and very dumb, and I kind of love it. One of the few variations of this trope from wife or child archetype actually comes from a South Korean zombie series in which the king has become zombified and is being kept alive for purely political reasons. So the motivation differs from the usual trope, which is normally built around grief, the inability to let go of a lost loved one, and a metric shit ton of trauma. So subcategories of the trope do exist, and what do you know, we have one to talk about here. So returning to Leon post-Greedo moment as he chases Shen Mei right into a plot expedition dump, we learn more or less the entire backstory of this series, as well as everyone's motivations in one scene. It's not paced particularly well, but it does gift me two very interesting things to talk about. Let's start with our resident captive loved one zombie variation. Shen Mei reveals that her little brother was the soldier that appears frequently in the flashbacks to the Civil War. Her brother was already infected and severely injured during the fight, but due to belonging to an affluent family, he was returned to them, while Shen Mei and their grandfather started working over the past 6 years to cure him of his affliction, while also seeking a way to bring down the people responsible for his condition. Now, while we are bending the trope just a tad here, what with him being male and not fully zombified, also pretty sure they haven't been feeding him human flesh, though I don't have evidence one way or the other with this one, he could also fall into the zombified child category, both because he is the grandson and Shen Mei's little brother, as she notes a couple of times. So much like the king from Kingdom, he belongs to a subcategory of this trope. I bet you didn't think we'd be talking about this weird niche zombie movie cliche in such detail, huh? Well, fuck you, I love this trope. It's appropriately tragic, fucked up, and vile, and you just love to see it. Unfortunately, the inclusion of this slightly twisted version of the trope doesn't distract me from the fact that Shen Mei could have told Leon all of this back at the apartment. Hell, Jason could have told him all of this and avoided a bullet. Mate, you didn't have to die, you could have just spoken to Leon. Lack of communication causes yet another narrative conflict. Typical. However, the stupidity of the character's lack of communication aside, I do actually appreciate the motivations laid down for both the antagonists and the heroes here, which brings me to the second idea that Infinite almost nails. In summary, the villain of this story is the politician from earlier. Remember I told you to keep him in mind? Well, here he is, relevant again. In short, the villain of this narrative is utilizing the virus in order to capitalize on the cure and use it as a form of blackmail to those infected. Creating a medical problem only to monetize a cure for it is a very real grift that people have actually tried in real life too, and in some cases carried out successfully to their great profit and the populace's mortifying loss. It is a simple, terrible grift. You forcibly create the demand for something, then become the only person that can supply it. In this case, the demand is the desire to not become a flesh-eating zombie. Pretty strong motivation, I'd say. And the supply is the cure that only this man has. which is why when Jason and his crew got infected, they were then blackmailed by this politician into doing his dirty work, which also explains why so many of them opted out the hard and fast way. Again, I cannot fault them for this. Now, this grift is going to be used on the rest of the populace. At least that is the plan at this point in the narrative. For a real-world medical example of this grift gone wrong for the con man, look at the man who almost single-handedly manufactured the modern-day anti-vax scare just to try and sell his own alternative vaccine for a hugely inflated price. You can thank Andrew Wakefield for the medical misinformation surrounding vaccinations to this day. If you're interested in that story, I will leave a link to H-Bomber Guy's video that goes through the entire situation. It's interesting, but it is also a very difficult watch. It gets very dark in moments when you look at the lengths that they went to in order to falsify their research and the children that were harmed along the way. So I do recommend it, but just go prepared for that content if you do watch it. However, on the other side of the spectrum, for an example of the con carried out to unfortunate success, we can take one look at the price of penicillin in some countries, when it is produced extremely cheaply and could very easily save lives. For some unfortunate people, the inflated prices are enough to make the choice between medication and paying the bills a very real concern. But because it is something people need to live, they have no choice but to pay huge dollars, or die. The penicillin patent was famously sold for pennies because the owners knew that it would be essential to saving lives, only for it to be exploited for the benefit of people far richer than you or I. It is blatantly immoral and the sort of evil that you would expect to see in a series as unabashedly corny as Resident Evil, but it's real life and we are living it. So what I'm saying is, and I cannot believe I am actually saying these words about a Resident Evil plot, it makes perfect sense. It's based on a real-world corrupt pharmaceutical tactic designed to make as much money possible off the lives and suffering of innocent people. So yeah, I think for once Resident Evil truly captured a genuine horror of the world with zombies. Again, I cannot believe I am fucking reading these words, but here we are. A lot of Resident Evil's bioweapon plots are based around offering weapons to other countries, and it tends to fall flat because of the indiscriminate, uncontrolled destruction of bioweapons that makes clear that anyone that uses them is more likely to die by them than anything else. But this plot, it makes sense. Even if there is still a lot of the Resident Evil brand nonsense in here too, it just wouldn't be an RE show without it. Can't wait for them to blow this all in the final episode and go full schlock. And speaking of that schlock, let's get back to it. This conversation in the Oval Office is actually pretty banger. It summarizes all the exposition that we just had dumped on us with the antagonist's way of using it to his advantage. I think it works pretty well, actually. It's a good reaffirmation of what we just learned, and while it is more or less a replay of the scene between the advisors and the president in the beginning of the show, now the audience can watch it while knowing exactly what everyone's agendas are. And again, I cannot believe I'm being so positive about this show.
Remember when I told you about terror? It starts with fear. You cultivate it, you watch it spread. And then you've got terror.
He wants the world to know what real terror's like.
Oh wait, never mind, we're back to the stupid. I missed you, schlock. Welcome back. Good grief, Resident Evil, you were really proud of this line, weren't you? You didn't think to maybe rework it a few more times to be less synonymous? No, this is the best we had already. Episode 4. How to trip at the finishing line. Rejoice, children, for our whiny man is back right on schedule to serve his only purpose in the plot. So, Leon calls up his new biggest fan, tells him something that we can't hear, and now he's ready to stake the nation's entire security on a guy he had one good experience with. It's probably for the best we didn't hear what Leon had to say on the call, because I have no idea how he could have so quickly and succinctly got the message across. Advisor is fucked. His zombies. No war. Make nice with China. Something like that, probably. Oh my god. It's happening. It's finally happening. We're in our obligatory Umbrella Laboratory scene. I don't care if Umbrella owns it or not. In the games and shows, there is almost always an Umbrella Laboratory and/or a Spencer Mansion, and here we are, in all its vast, inexplicable glory. And as we enter the familiar territory of our obligatory Umbrella Underground Lab, we are also treated to our typical evil bastard monologue. And unfortunately, we further slide backwards into, once again, the damn super soldiers sold to foreign entities territory. Every single fucking time, Resident Evil, I swear. Okay, look, I already walked you through the real-world version of this plot, and we can all just collectively pretend that Infinite didn't shoot itself in the foot by adding the super soldier sub-paragraph to the proposal, okay? Good, let's move on.
Nice work, Major. Now that you're officially dead, you'll be more effective on covert ops.
I've been as good as dead the last 6 years, sir. You killed me.
Bastard! What are you doing? I'm the only one who can help. You need it.
Not anymore.
See, this is what I said before about bioweapons being a terrible weapon to buy and or sell because the likelihood of it killing you is always lingering around the 85% mark. On the plus side, this bioweapon design is actually something you'd probably find in the games. I do appreciate that, even if he looks a bit like a tree and has the wooden dialogue to match. And I think I like this if only because it feels like almost a perfect recreation of a boss scene from a Resident Evil game. It's almost uncanny, actually. But it does lead me to remark that through this entire series there's been a rather gross lack of zombies. Even more so in the mutation variants that Resident Evil is practically known for by now. We had your run-of-the-mill zombies and some rats and one boss battle. It's not inspiring very much in me. Now that Jason is back, completely rendering my surprise and respect for his sudden death moot, he again reiterates his stance on fear and terror.
I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna go up there and show myself to them, to the world. And then this torture chamber, everything is all gonna burn.
No! I have my brother's chip. All the evidence we need is right here. All we have to do is go public with it, like we planned. You don't have to do this.
That won't help anything. It won't change what this country's done, or what it's doing right now. You know that. I will show you fear.
To try and summarize his mentality without the awful prose, Jason here is convinced he needs to strike fear into the general populace to force them into action. While not a perfect approach, I can see how he came to such a conclusion. However, it is literally everything else about his plan that falls flat. Unless he lays out exactly what the people should be afraid of, in this case, big pharmaceutical companies and corrupt politicians, he's just gonna whip the people into a panic frenzy about him specifically. They won't have any direction for their fear to be even remotely constructive. Also, Jason, honey, sweetie, my darling idiotic little pumpkin, you live in the Resident Evil universe, post 4th game. You think you're the scariest thing these people have ever seen? You're a tyrant variation, and not nearly big or veiny enough to strike terror into their hearts. This is your competition. You are fighting a losing battle here. Now, I do actually have something positive to say about the show once again, albeit a weak praise. Jason is going about proving how far he'll go for this poorly thought out philosophy, and to prove he's serious, he...
You saved Jun-Si. I won't let you die like this.
I'm already dead.
Jason, no!
Oh, Jesus Christ. Just like when I originally thought Jason was dead, this death is genuinely shocking in just how brutal and abrupt it was. And while I don't like the utility of it just to make Jason less sympathetic, I did find myself flinching when it happened and being sad to see Shen Mei go. And while I do find her death frustrating because now we don't even have the chance of the only female character doing something badass in a final fight against the guy she had history with. Actually, wait, no, that's where that thought ends. This frustrates me. The best we had in this show for our females here is Shen Mei killing some of the crew on the sub, and even that was not particularly cool when paired against Leon and Jason's action scenes in that same sub. Again, showing the execution scene. So yeah, I am just annoyed that she tried to empathize with him and got her neck snapped without contributing anything to the final fight. Thank you for reminding me not to say nice things about you, Infinite. But here we are. Leon and Jason have themselves a little rumble in really what does look like a collection of cutscenes from an end boss fight in one of the games, while the president prepares to give his "Let's go to war" speech directed at China. But luckily for the rest of the world, Pretty Boy comes through for us. You gotta love it. Even if the president's admiration for Leon prompts him to be almost criminally negligent, just imagine if the dude lied that it was from Leon, or if Leon got something wrong, or if the message was misunderstood. Honestly, this president is pretty easily swayed into declaring war or peace. No wonder the RE universe keeps having the US messing up other countries. Again, I'm not changing that joke.
When they see me, then this world will know terror.
Again, I am sorry to tell you this, good sir, but you live in the Resident Evil universe. Again, these are your peers. Regardless, Jason's efforts are thwarted by Leon, and as he lays dying on a spike, he once more plays his greatest hits about terror and fear, perhaps never realizing they were actually synonyms. But this little speech clearly imparts something onto Leon, a desire to cover things up, I guess. So, wait. His rant from episode 2 about the government not caring about the innocence of Raccoon City before they nuked it off the face of the map, and was this his character arc? Realizing that actually keeping secrets from the populace is a good thing, actually. Weird move, but okay. I'm jesting. Sorta. Basically, I'm saying there's no clear character arc here, so go wild in the comments. What did Leon Kennedy learn today, kids? Personally, I think he learned he doesn't have a career in stand-up comedy ahead of him. Play the clip. You know, the one.
Sexy.
With the world saved for now and Leon's comedy dreams dead at his feet, he returns to the president's side with his new biggest fan to hype him up. Oh, whiny Pretty Boy, how we love you. Actually wait, did I ever learn his name? Oh well, it doesn't matter, we still love the boy. He went from an arrogant priss to a mad fanboy in a short amount of time, and we stand that, to be honest. As for the politician, he's still kicking, but he's been infected with his own virus, forced to scramble for cures just like the people he originally exploited and had sell their lives and souls to him just to keep getting their medicine. The poetry of it isn't lost on me. Unfortunately, he is now also being exploited by a company just as shitty as he is. Hi Tricell, it's good to see you. I know it's no Umbrella review, but this ties directly into the events of the 5th game, which came after this one in the timeline. Again, I keep referring to this as a game because that's just what it feels like. It does actually check out timeline-wise, and at a guess, I would say they used him to work on the Ouroboros virus from the 5th game. So really all his fate did was make some other evil bastard more powerful. Great. Regardless, this is the end of Infinite. Overall, not a terribly good showing for Netflix's first Resident Evil series, because in all honesty, this was just a regular CGI Resident Evil movie that they've cut into 4 parts and called a series. Every episode is only about 25 minutes long, and it's pretty obvious what they've done, and it doesn't feel great. And I don't actually have high hopes for the live action reboot around the corner. What? What is it? What? No, I covered everything. Honestly, with the length of this thing, I probably covered it all too thoroughly. I could have slapped a 5 out of 10 on this, called myself reviewer, and been home for supper. Like, what did I miss? Wait, Claire was in this? Yeah, so actually, Claire's in this series. Claire motherfucking Redfield is in the show, and I got through my entire recap and analysis by only once mentioning her as the journalist, and I only did that so the seeds were planted from the jump that I knew she was there and it meant nothing. Where in my recap was Claire missing a detriment to the narrative? Let's take a look! She spoke to Leon in the foyer for a few seconds, an encounter in which they didn't hug or show any real affection for one another, like 2 lampposts exchanging pleasantries and a brief recap of the plot so far. That could have been cut and we would lose nothing. Her asking Leon about the Civil War and showing him a picture of a child that drew the outbreak there didn't lead Leon to any revelations, nor would it have changed what he learned through the rest of the show. That info dump that Shenmei gave him basically covered all of that. Well, what about her investigation into the Civil War and her search that brought her to find Jason's old teammates? Well, this was for the audience only. It provided no influence on the rest of the plot. She found no damning evidence, and really any other random civilian could have checked on the house and called the cops, and if the audience's camera was there, we would have learned exactly as much. But even then, it could have just been done in a flashback, seeing as we already saw Jason reacting to his friend opting out in an earlier dream sequence. So Claire wasn't needed for this either. Okay, sure, I hear you saying, but what about when she was kidnapped by the politician? Oh, you mean this scene? Claire, I know you have a gun in your house. What is this shit? This scene is where my hope that Resident Evil would give its two female characters any respect, agency, or cool moments fucking died. Here is Claire, boulder punching probably runs in the family Redfield, picking up a lamp when she thinks someone is attacking her in her home. We all know she has a gun. Claire has survived just as many fucked up situations as Leon, and yet barely does anything in this show. Combat or otherwise, she gives us nothing. She is more or less reduced to a basic civilian reporter that doesn't even offer that much in the way of revealing the plot. I am thoroughly unimpressed. Claire continued the line Redfield was in Raccoon City. She dealt with Code Veronica, took down a Wesker child, and you are telling me that she cannot handle two regular CIA dudes. I am being generous by assuming they are CIA. To be honest, I have no idea. They're probably just hired dudes. And oh, we're not fucking done. After this, it only gets more insulting. So, Claire gets kidnapped and brought to the final boss scene of the show, just so the villain can monologue at her a little bit. Surely here, she will be given something to do, have a cool moment or two. You know that she doesn't. You already know where this is going.
Claire?
And now we're degrading Claire to the point she can't even jump on her own. Out fucking standing, Resident Evil.
Claire, control room. Keep him busy.
On it! Okay. Alright. What? Tier 103. Oh, I got this. Oh, yeah. Yep, and yep. Hell yeah, I'm sure. I'm down.
Okay, so Claire lowered the platform. Well done, you did something. Only for Kennedy's rocket to immediately do the job better. Then right after, she gets injured by falling debris and goes on to do nothing else. I am not fucking with you. I am not skimping on the details. She gets hit by a falling bit of debris and is unconscious for the rest of the fight. I love it, Resident Evil. Truly. You show such respect for an OG character. And then at the end, we have this scene between Leon and Claire that just reaffirms that she's legitimately only a reporter in this show. She's not a fighter, she's not a survivor, she is a lucky pretty face that Leon happens to know, and I hate it here. In short, this is absurd. Claire could have been entirely cut from this show and nothing would have changed plot-wise. She did nothing, offered no cool moments, nor lived up to her own reputation in the game universe. She was included only for the recognition value, and given nothing of substance to do. Frankly, I've never cared much about Claire, but even I'm getting angry on her behalf. The literal only positive thought I had at any point with Claire on screen about her treatment was when she searched the house that Jason's friend died in. It was one of the few sections of the show that sort of recaptured some of Resident Evil's spooky house energy, and it felt appropriate to let Claire have the scary house scene, even if ultimately she didn't get much to do with it in the end. And that's it! That's the only positive thing I have to say about Claire in this show. And I think I've annoyed myself enough with this recap to finally wrap things up here. The conclusion. I am mad. Look, I love Resident Evil, and I especially adore it at its most B-grade horror movie worthy. Of course, I've watched all the live action movies, and while I have a few I didn't enjoy as much as the others, overall, I love that series. Ludicrous moments and all. I've seen the other animated movies, and while I don't actually have a great memory of them, I think I enjoyed myself when I watched them. It has been a long time. Oh god, do I need to watch those again? Well, that's a problem for another day. My point is, I don't need Resident Evil to be good or scary to like it. I'm not a Resident Evil purist that stands by the idea that Resident Evil was only good pre the 5th game, and maybe including the 7th game. I love Wesker in the volcano. I love the insanity of Code Veronica. I would up and die for half the characters in Resident Evil Village. I even sort of like Resident Evil 6 for how dumb the plot is. I am more than happy for Resident Evil to be bad and dumb, but I cannot abide by it being boring, droll, pointless, and dull. I suppose if I had to sum up this video in one sentence, it would be this. Resident Evil might be terrible and awful sometimes, but it's always terrible, awful fun. And Resident Evil Infinite Darkness just isn't. So I definitely just made a video that no one is interested in, but god damn it, this is what I needed just to create something again, finally. And if you're still here, well, I'm assuming you've passed out your keyboard or gone off to do something more fun and just left me running in the background. But let me thank my patrons all the same. Especially Lil Convoy and Mara. Mara, I love you. I'm sorry I can never say your username correctly. Thank you so much for supporting me while I tumble into silly videos like this. And for real, if anyone did get this far, thank you as well. Now go get some water, straighten out your spine. You've been slouching at the screen for far too long. Probably. I certainly have. I'm gonna go find out what the sun looks like again. With that, I will see you next time. Take care of yourselves, my guys.